more open competition when we're building ferries so that we get the best value for our dollar. And I think we need to similarly make sure that our expenses, that we do the best thing we can to keep down fuel costs. One of the issues I was talking to a captain who was a captain in higher management in the ferry system for many years, and one of the things that he said is sometimes we're having a lot of runs that they're not very many people on the runs, and we do them anyways, which is actually causing a lot more wear and tear on the ferries, and we're not doing timely maintenance. So we need to do things based on a good business plan and making sure that we're taking care of the ferries and in an efficient manner.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, as far as the ferry system goes, I happen to love the ferry system, but there are a lot of flaws because it is a huge system and we have had changes in the last 5 years that have made it better and have made it worse. The Senate refused to confirm Lynn Peterson, and so she was let go, and then they had to find an interim director. But as far as I'm concerned, our ferries are the highway. Each ferry goes right, each ferry, state road goes down right to it and continues that across the sound. I wish our ferries were more affordable for the average citizen and for our senior citizens. You know, some of them can't even go to see their grandchildren anymore because of the price. But those things we will take care of. Right now, the ferry system is recovering under good leadership and hopefully will continue.
Great, thank you. Actually, if you would hold the mic for the next question. And this audience member actually makes an assumption on your stance on that issue, but I'll let you handle that. The question is, what would you do to promote an income tax for Washington State?
Well, first of all, that's not realistic. We won't see an income tax in our lifetime. That doesn't mean I don't support it. I do. But you are never going to get 2/3 vote of the House, 2/3 vote of the Senate, and then on the ballot. It's just not going to happen, which is a little sad because of the type of economy that we have. We need tax reform. We need maybe capital gains tax, maybe closing our loopholes and exemptions. But in our lifetime, I doubt if we will ever see an income tax, which to me is the fairest form of taxation.
Thank you. Loretta, please.
I would do nothing to promote an income tax. One of the worst things that we could do for our economy is to end up with all 3 different kinds of taxes. Most states only either have a property tax or sales tax or income tax. They don't have all 3. And actually income tax is not necessarily less volatile than a sales tax. We do not need an income tax. If we had another income tax, we'd still have all the other taxes, and then we'd have more, they might even say, well, it's just going to be 1% for this group. They will always find ways to increase it. And actually our state budget, we went up $5 billion over the last biennium. Our spending has not really ever gone down, even during the recession. And our taxes, our budget needs to be based on, should not go beyond population and inflation growth, which it has many times. So we need to control spending, not increase taxes.
Thank you. If you hold the mic, Loretta, for next question. And staying on the same issue regarding taxes, and this is regarding the minimum wage. What is your opinion?
We should not increase the minimum wage. Washington State already has the highest minimum wage in the country. And as an economist and as somebody that's very familiar with workforce development, we have plenty, I talk with employers all the time that are struggling to hire people with skills, not necessarily a 4-year degree, just skills that are willing to pay. They are offering $20, $25 an hour. And so we should not be increasing the minimum wage for jobs that are not intended really necessarily to be careers. They're intended to be first jobs to get up in the career ladder. And so it's not a good idea to increase the minimum wage, because then you're actually going to drive up all the other wages and make it more and more difficult for people to hire people with skills. People need to go after those skills if they want to earn higher wages.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. First of all, we don't have the highest minimum wage. Hawaii just put in a minimum wage that's higher than ours. But ours is $9.75, I think. And the initiative would bring it up to $13.50 by the year 2020. Now, I hear people say, as Loretta just said, that prices will go up and all this. As a person who believes that low-wage workers should be lifted up so that they can put that money into the economy as well is very important. Now, when we had the initiative, I forget how many, 10 years ago, it passed with over 70% vote. And you know what? Not one restaurant closed, not one person got fired, and the economy kept rolling on.
Thank you. All right, and so back to you, Sherry, for starting off this next round of questions. And this question is, how would you assist or resist Governor Inslee's plan to relocate 700 Syrian refugees in Washington?
Did you say 700?
So I have 700, oh, I'm sorry, 7,000. I'm sorry, excuse my apologies to the audience member who wrote this. How would you assist or resist Governor Inslee's plan to relocate 7,000 Syrian refugees in Washington?
Well, I think we're a country of immigrants. From the very beginning till now, I know my grandparents came from Europe. They came from Eastern Europe, and then, they made their lives here. And I can't imagine that 7,000 people out of 7 million people could do anything that would hurt us. It would make us stronger and have a better economy with these people producing the same work that they did when they were in Syria. I don't believe in discriminating, and if somebody does something wrong, you can expel them from the country.
Thank you. Let's see, that was a YWC.
The YWC is going to
This happens. Okay. So, please, Loretta, do you need to have the question right again?
No.
Okay, please.
This is the United States of America, and immigration is actually a federal policy. So I'm not really quite sure what Jay Inslee has to do with this at all. Anyways, the only thing I can imagine is that theoretically, the state of Washington could be offering funding for the relocation of these people, or food, or housing, or whatever. So but I'm not sure where he's getting the money, because I thought money is normally allocated through budgets and through the legislature. So, but really, immigration is not a state issue. It's a federal issue.
Okay, thank you. Loretta, if you please hold the mic for the next question, which is, what are your thoughts on state funding of fish passage barriers?
Well, I think we need to, that's already been decided that there's some, I don't know if it was the Supreme Court or somebody, but it was decided that we have to replace the culverts that are inhibiting fish passage with bridges. So I think we need to do that, and as we can. It may not be with all the competing expenses. I think we're struggling with to fund it and to fund it on time. So we may not be able to do it as quickly as we want to. I do think we need to make sure it is also based on best science. I mean, not every culvert, not every stream is the same. So we need to prioritize the ones that are really based on scientific research are the biggest issues. I know sometimes even these culverts need to be replaced regardless of the fish because they're just not the best answer. We had one road that was completely wiped out by flooding in our area just because it needed to be a bridge, not a culvert.
Thank you. Terry, same question.
Well, as far as the fish passage barriers goes, that was a court order. The tribes in Washington State sued the state government asking that these culverts be taken out and fish passages put in. So that's something that we had no control over. The other thing is that this comes out of a totally different budget than the general fund. This comes out of the transportation budget. And so I don't think we're scratching around for money for those fish barriers being taken out. But it will certainly be nice when our fish come back, and they haven't been able to because of all the different barriers that have been put up. So I'm looking forward to the orcas having a great dinner.
Thank you, Sherry. Please hold the mic for this next question. This question has to do with, well, let me just simply ask you, which is, would you support a law that restores the basic human right to work without mandatory membership in labor organization, or in a labor organization, sorry?
That's called the right to work law, which, really sort of doesn't fit what it really does. What it really does is it lets you work for less. Unions are there to protect workers. And whether you like unions or not, they're here to stay. The unions gave you the weekends, they did away with child labor, they did a lot of good things. And I think that we have to give them credit for that. As far as right to work, it's really a bad thing. And hopefully it will never come here, and if it comes here, we'll defeat it.
Thank you. Loretta, same question.
I think we need to find balance. It's interesting. I was talking to a woman who has a daycare business, and now she's being told by the state that if she wants to serve low-income people, she needs to do the state preschool system, and her staff also need to join a union. Why is the state forcing people to join a union when they're not even in the government? And so I think, and it's also come about as an issue where we could save money by allowing the private sector to provide certain services and contracting with them. And we passed a law to do that a number of years ago, and yet we barely use it because, again, we give the unions are at the negotiating table and are not allowing, if there's any risk of putting any state employee out of work, we cannot work with the private sector. So I think we really need to find balance with the unions. My sister has worked for the state of Washington for 40 years, and she's really frustrated and would rather not be a member of the union.
Thank you. Please hold the mic for the next question. And on that same discussion theme area, this question is statewide collective bargaining. Is it a good idea or bad?
Well, I think it's not that black and white, but I think we do need, maybe some collective bargaining, but again, to find balance. I think one of the concerns is that it's not a transparent process, and it's all done completely with the governor. So the governor can go ahead and decide to do a collective bargaining with all of the employees and give them whatever they want, and then he gets elected, and then we go to the legislature and ask for all of the money. So I think we need a better and more transparent process for collective bargaining, and to make sure that it's fair and that it's reasonable. Again, I've worked for the state. You have most state employees have better benefits, better protection than anyone else in the private sector, and yet we don't have a good performance management system, and they're not always held accountable. And that happens at middle and upper management levels as well. And so we need to find balance on that.
Thank you. Sherry, same question, please. The question is statewide collective bargaining. Is it a good idea or bad?
Well, I think you have to look at each area of Washington State. In eastern Washington, the price of homes and goods and services are less than in western Washington. And collective bargaining is there to protect the workers as well as to protect the state or the employer. The reason we have collective bargaining is that if you have collective bargaining, you give up your right to strike. So, for me, I would much prefer to have collective bargaining, and I'd like to see it by region than I would statewide.
Thank you. And next question, Sherry, please.
do the challenge thing?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Yes, you may.
Okay, so our teachers.
Actually, you get the mic for 1 minute, please.
So our teachers have extensive collective bargaining, and yet they still strike. So I don't quite understand how, if you have collective bargaining, you give up the right to strike.
Okay, Sherry, you have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. That is a very cloudy subject. When the teachers have struck because they couldn't get their wages, benefits, vacation days, that, and when it went to the court made it cloudy. It could be against the law, or it may not be. Governor Gregoire had to address this in her administration. The fact is that collective bargaining is a good thing. Strikes are not a good thing, but sometimes civil disobedience is how you get things moving.
Okay, thank you. And I believe this next question goes to you, Sherry, since you ended the last one. And the question is, what is feel-good, it's in quotes, feel-good legislation? And what type of legislation would you work on?
Well, first of all, I don't know what feel-good legislation is. I would assume it's warm and fuzzy, and legislation isn't usually warm and fuzzy, but it addresses, I'm sure, social justice. What kind of legislation would I work on? I happen to believe in social justice. I also believe in unions, and I also believe in the elderly. And those are the three areas that I work very hard in. For Fish Line, so to speak, we got them $665,000. The reason why? Because they had to turn away 400 families. Now, to me, that is not warm and fuzzy. In Kingston Village Green, I worked for 7 years, and we got them 7 appropriations to build senior housing, affordable senior housing, and then the community center, which now has a library that you don't have to turn sideways to walk down the aisles. So there are many good things that I guess are warm and fuzzy, and some that aren't.
Thank you. And Loretta, same question, please.
Well, I consider feel-good legislation to be the kind of the opposite of dealing with the real core functions of government. We have a lot of demands and a lot of needs, and theoretically we could do everything for everyone in every circumstance. But I don't think that's the role of government. So while I think, we need to think about people that are going without or cannot do certain things for themselves, but we really need to focus on the core functions of government. If 48% of our state budget is going to education, we really need to make sure that that's an excellent education system, that it's not full of bureaucracy, that it's not full of too many mandates that don't make sense, or teaching mechanisms that are not effective. We need to focus on education, we need to focus on transportation, and we need to focus on having a healthy, enabling environment for economic growth. And those are the bigger issues that we need to focus on.
Thank you. Will you please hold the mic for the next question? So this came up in your responses previously as well as currently. It has to do with education. Again, I slipped in another education question. I apologize for not grouping these ones. This one simply is, if you fund education first, what will be last and unfunded?
Feel good legislation? So, what would be last? That would, yeah, we'd have to really think about that. I think my position is that every single, I don't think you can necessarily, for example, you're not going to do away with specific agencies or every single program. We need to have the ability to make every single government agency more efficient. That means you need to get rid of certain, certain programs within an agency or certain aspects of it. We need to have a review of legislation that makes things more expensive, too many regulations. So we need more efficiency throughout so that we don't have to put anything that's particularly important as last.
Thank you. And Terry, same question.
Well, I was trying to get this thought out. I was thinking ahead of you, Joe, so can you read the question again?
Certainly. The question is if you fund education first,
What is that?
what will last and be unfunded?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that we should leave any group of people behind. And when we have people, children, who are homeless, 3,700 in our state that are homeless, have no roof over their heads, no food, I think we have I think that's a core value, to feed children so that they can grow up to be productive members of society. I think it's great to fund education first. I think we have to do that, but we don't have to leave anybody behind. And that's something I would never do.
Thank you. So Sherry, last question, and then you'll get to head this off. And the last question goes, what are the 3 issues do you think are the most important facing the state of Washington? Top 3. Do you
Top
think?
3.
Top 3 issues facing our state.
Okay, that's education. Under the McCleary decision, we have to plan on how we're going to pay $3-4 billion in the next 2 years. The second one is homelessness, which I just addressed for children and adults. And the third one is my brain just went blank. I know the answer to that. Just wait now. Homelessness. Oh, mental health. Sorry, Joe. Just seeing you stand there, it just slipped my mind. Mental health, because the courts have said very specifically, we cannot board these people anymore. That within 7 days, you have to have an evaluation if somebody is in jail. And if you don't get people into Western State, it's $500 a day or $1,000. So those are the 3 things.
Thank you very much. Loretta, your top 3, please.
Well, my first concern is education. But related to that is also the issue of drug abuse and mental health. We tend to talk about those 2 things together. But we obviously have a really serious problem with drug abuse, and we need to have a better understanding of why that is and what to do about it. And one of my concerns that's related to that is really sort of a decline in values. And a decline in values that's actually in part because of our educational system. As we were listening to Barbara Mattson yesterday and thinking about our judicial system, we need to do more with our kids and make them aware of what's going to happen if they even think about taking methamphetamine, or if they even think about taking heroin, or if they even think about breaking certain laws, where that's going to go, how that's going to affect their life. And maybe that's something that needs to be included in our civics education. And so, there we go.
So that concludes our question and answer period of this morning. Now we go into our 2 minutes. Okay? I really like being with you guys. So we're sticking around. We got plenty to eat and drink. No, 2 minutes. Sorry, I'll read 2 minutes summary from our candidates. I know that Sherry let it off, so we'll let Loretta end the session with the 2-minute summary, please.
Thank you. It's a big decision to decide to run for office, and I appreciate all the work that Sherry has done. There are not a lot of people that want to do this, and having run for several months now, I can understand why. It's a lot of work, and the reason I'm doing this is because I really care about this state, and I really care about this country. And I've lived in some of the poorest countries in the world and some of the most corrupt countries in the world. And I've realized that the best thing that we can do for the rest of the world is actually get our act together here at home. We are so blessed and we have so many privileges and we cannot waste that. And we need to challenge ourselves and we need to challenge our youth to use all of these opportunities and to be better. And we need to show how that can be done as leaders. We need a better government, and we need a more efficient government because things are not going to get easier. Things are not going to just get better by themselves if we don't get stronger. And we need to be smarter, and we need to be more efficient, and we need to be more accountable. And that's why I'm running for state representative. And I'd really be honored to serve the people of Kitsap County and the 23rd Legislative District and Washington State. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sherry, your 2-minute summary, please.
Thank you. Well, thank you again for coming. I know how difficult it is to get up, as I said, in the dark. And I appreciate the chamber doing this, and I'm so glad this is the last time this election cycle. I think you all know that I've said I'm passionate about social justice. I'm passionate about unions and working families and their wages. I also am passionate about the elderly and who are voiceless down in Olympia, and the vulnerable in our society, which are our children who are homeless, which is, any vulnerable, the disabled, all of that. And that's really important. I think that I do a good job. I have brought to Kitsap County the things that I know that people in Kitsap County want. And that's what I have stood for since the very beginning. My values mirror the 23rd District. So I'm passionate about all those things, but I'm also passionate about my constituents. And they have always been very loyal. And so I'm asking for their vote. I'm asking for your vote. And hopefully we will come to a meeting of the minds about what we should do in the future with education, mental illness, and homelessness.
Great. All right, so that concludes our summary session. First of all, before we begin, I just want to make sure I want to invite you next week, because next week we have State Representative 23, Position 1, State Representative District 26, is we're going to have Larry Sequest and Jesse Young, and also State Representative District 26, Position 2, which will be Michelle Calder and also Randy Spitzer. Now, with that being said, let's give and show our appreciation to our candidates this morning for their